A quick note before we get into the episode. Oversharing is a podcast for entertainment purposes only. It is not a medical podcast and does not constitute medical or psychological advice. Always seek the advice of your physician or mental health professional.
All right, let's do some intentions. Hi, Jordana and Dr. Naomi. Firstly, thank you for all that you do, and congrats to Jordana on her 2 healthy babies. My husband and I have been through a huge roller coaster the last 2 weeks and are looking for an intention. I'm currently 22 weeks pregnant, and everything was going really well until my first anatomy scan that led to another, and then another, and finally a fetal MRI and a diagnosis that our baby is missing the quote unquote major highways of their brain. It's hard to express the fear and emotional stress we felt leading up to this diagnosis. And now that we have it, we still feel like there's so much uncertainty. We're told that children with this diagnosis have a 60 to 75% chance of living a completely normal life, and that there are adults living with this condition that have no idea. The remaining 25 to 40% makes us wake up every day feeling like we're living a nightmare. Our child could have anything from minor delays in speaking to complete loss of motor functions like eating and walking. We are trying our best to be optimistic and enjoy the rest of my pregnancy, but we are ultimately terrified. The doctors have said that there is nothing else we can do until the baby is born, at which point they'll repeat an MRI and eventually consider therapies in an attempt to keep their milestones on track. We're struggling to balance the wish to be optimistic with bracing ourselves for the worst. Well, we also fear that if our child is one of the lucky ones with perfectly normal development, we'll be tempted to treat them differently. Hoping you can help us to not let our fears about the future completely overtake what could be an exciting and wholesome last few months as a family of 2. Thank you.
Oh, this is really hard. So much unknown, so much love and care. And even when you don't have this, you start to envision your baby's life and what they're going to be like and what they're going to look like. And now you have this really complicating unknown in here. So I'm glad that you wrote in, and this is a really tough spot to be in with these percentages. Like, what does that even mean? And there's nothing you could do until the baby comes.
Yeah. And it's very hard, I think, to not spiral into this fear of the unknown and, again, what it will be like for your kid. And I remember feeling that at like every slightly abnormal test result I would ever see, even if it was like within the margins, but a little off or towards the higher end. You get all this testing, especially, in the year that we live in. There's so much testing, which is a good thing in a lot of ways because it catches things that are bad early. But the other thing it does is sort of gives us information sometimes that doesn't wind up leading to anything meaningful and just serves to stress us out. And that could be what's going on here, or it could be something legitimate, but like it's tough because they might, I don't know what test or what they found, but that might be something where like 30 years ago, no one would have had any idea. And unless it can lead to like a meaningful action, like during birth or right after, it's hard to feel like the information is useful to you in any way in this current moment.
It does sound like the only benefit or the main benefit is that they could start some type of therapies. If there are any delays or anything, they can start those therapies earlier, be prepared to start whatever therapies. It doesn't sound like it's a medication issue or they're going to do a surgery to fix anything. It just sounds like earlier intervention. But what I hear in her is that she wants to try to enjoy the rest of her pregnancy, be present, while they're still enjoying the last few months where it's just the 2 of them, and not be just completely overwhelmed and burdened every day. Because this is just their 20-week scan. Like they've got a ways to go. So I appreciate that you're trying to find that way to be present. And the interesting thing is that love and fear are just so intertwined in what pulls our hearts and minds towards something that's really important. Like this intense fear that they're feeling is really just love and the fear of losing this love, or fear of having someone that they love suffer, or fear of all the things that parents are afraid of. Your kids aren't going to be accepted, or they're not going to be loved, or they're going to have pain, or they're going to have discomfort in their lives. And so I think that's what they're faced with right now. And if you're looking for an intention, which you are, I think it's got to be around this idea of, allowing for this fear to work its way through. It's kind of like the competitiveness thing. Like, it's just, we're wired. We're going to have these feelings of being competitive. There's not much you can do to stop that automatic thought and feeling from coming up. Like, if someone sent you a picture of their baby and they were doing something that your baby is not doing, you're going to feel that way. When this thought crosses your minds, you're going to have this fear. You're going to have this pit in your stomach feeling, whatever that looks like, tightness in your chest or pit in your stomach, you're going to have it. And instead of being like, I want to just enjoy my pregnancy, why do I have to feel this way? Or whatever your mind does with that, to just be able to say, okay, this fear is really my love for my baby. And I'm going to allow it to work its way through, whether that means you have to cry, or it means you just have to sit and hug your partner, and, or maybe you want to send a little prayer down to your baby. Like, I think, I'm not religious, but I do think the idea of praying can help you get away from the noise of the mind, like the Googling and the information seeking and just kind of send your love in the direction where it needs to go in that moment, which is to your partner and your baby. So yeah, the intention that I wrote for her is, this fear is love in disguise. We will allow it to move through us and bring us back to presence. So you don't want to resist the fear. You want to allow that to be there, but realize that what it really is love for your family, love for this baby, for the life that you want them to have. And no matter what happens, that love isn't going anywhere. Like, you're going to love this baby regardless. And if they feel love from you, they're going to have a meaningful life. So, just kind of remembering that. But this is a really hard situation. I know that you love this little baby so much, and the fear is overwhelming, but I would give it room to heal, to move through.
Yes.
When it comes up.
I like that.
Well,
okay.
Best of luck. Keep us posted if you think about it. We can be here for you on your journey.
Yes. Good luck for sure. All right, let's do some triggers.
Big fan of the pod. I have a triggered scenario for you that I'll just jump right into. My husband and I recently got married in Florence, Italy, and all of our family graciously flew from the US to celebrate with us. We were so happy that everyone could make it. Our dream wedding was black tie in a villa in the Tuscan countryside, just outside of Florence. We had never considered having children at our wedding, so we opted for child-free. Our families totally understood, especially our siblings with children. Honestly, they were thrilled to have a trip evening without their kids. My sister left her kids in the US with their other grandma, so her husband's mom. My husband's brother brought his kids to Italy, but my husband and I paid for his sister-in-law and her wife to come to Italy to watch their kids during the wedding. His niece was not even a year old yet, so they didn't feel comfortable leaving her in the US. Part of our reasoning for not having kids is that we wanted a romantic evening wedding, which is kind of ruined by screaming, overtired children. And we didn't want our siblings to have to leave the wedding early to go put their kids to bed and stay with them. My sister and my husband's brother were our matron of honor and best man, so they wanted to stay all night. We also just wanted a glamorous, fancy evening. That's why we went for black tie. There was not even DJ-style dancing, just a string quartet, so it would have been extremely boring for kids. But another big reason for not having the kids there is that my husband's parents and grandparents cannot keep their cool around the grandkids. A conversation with any of them while a child is near, forget about it. They can't keep their focus for 2 seconds. As the couple without kids, this is super triggering for us in general. My husband's parents will be mid-conversation with us, and we can see very clearly that they're not even listening because one of their grandchildren is nearby. It feels so invalidating, so rude, and like we do not matter at all to them because we haven't produced any grandchildren. Even if the kids are not around, we always somehow get to talking about them. Ugh. Having all of this in mind, at the end of our beautiful wedding, we stood up from the table, which was lined from one end to the other in gorgeous, full, fresh flowers and gold and white candles. I like how she sets the scene.
Seriously, yeah.
Looking around at everyone in their tuxes and gowns, we felt so proud to have created such a stunning day. My husband's grandpa was our officiant, and he was just about bursting with pride looking at all of his family together. He's such a class act. We were so happy that he was such a big part of our day. My dad had said a really heartwarming blessing, and my sister didn't have a dry eye all evening. We turned to leave the Tuscan garden under the evening stars as the air began to cool around us.
Is this People magazine? Like, what is the...
She's we'll talk about it, but
really
she's
setting a
definitely
scene.
setting the scene of how perfect it was, except it was still quiet as the string quartet had already packed up and left after we finished our 5-course dinner, a beautiful cake, and some sneaky Italian sweets as the grand finale. Then, in front of all of our guests, my husband's dad said loudly to the waiter, "Could we have a to-go box to pack up some of the desserts? I know my grandson would love them." Said grandparents' parents, the best man and his wife, were mortified and immediately looked over at us. What the fuck? First of all, we're in Europe. They don't really do to-go boxes in general. The waiter was visibly confused. Secondly, this is a wedding. Who asks for a to-go box at a wedding? Lastly, we didn't effing invite the kids. Of course, this really isn't about the desserts. But why could we not have one single day that has absolutely nothing to do with the grandkids? My husband did discreetly protest and say, "Hey, Dad, let's not do that, please. It's a black tie wedding. We don't need to-go boxes." So in the end, he's making it about the kids, upsetting his son and very clearly upsetting me, the bride. But no, he doubles down and makes a scene. We end up giving in, and he takes a box of desserts from our absolutely stunning table, makes a poor waiter who's been grinding for hours on end, making our dinner absolutely spectacular, run around to find a stupid to-go box, and made sure that the last moment of our wedding day was about his effing grandson. Obviously, I'm triggered. But how triggered would you be? A lot of love, a no effing to-go boxes batch.
Okay. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but the writer sounds kind of like a monster.
I mean, first of all, love
she
the
really
writing.
tried hard. Yeah, she tried hard to really set the scene to give us a sense of why it was triggering, and I appreciate that. But this seems kind of sweet to me.
Yeah. You know what? I'm going to validate this.
Okay.
And I think it's because she did. I really love it. I think it was very entertaining for the listeners to have this. It was like reading a novel.
Yeah. So I'm saying she knew, I think, that she needed to like really set a scene of
perfectly
perfection.
adult and like, elegant the situation was.
Validate. Believe you. I believe you.
Yes. It was a beautiful, elegant wedding. And I do validate. I think it's not, she even says it's not about the desserts. It's not about the desserts. What I do validate is that I can imagine for people who don't have kids, that especially if you're not, I mean, for anyone, but especially if you're not like a huge kid person where like,
I would say I would lend that to this person.
Yes.
that thought. I would say she's not a huge kid person.
Right. Especially if you're not a huge kid person, how child-centric our culture in general is, and how child-centric it seems like their entire family dynamic is, that part's triggering. I could see it being triggering to try to have a conversation with your fiance's parents, and every 2 seconds they're like catering to every whim of a 4-year-old that's walking up and wants, to play or wants a hug or wants a lollipop or whatever. I could see that being really annoying. Like, I have no place anymore in your life because I don't have kids. Now I'm like, went from, someone who's very important to the bottom of the totem pole because this 4-year-old has, chocolate on his face, whatever it is, So I do validate, I think, the bigger picture irritation of we feel like we have no place, which is also probably subconsciously or consciously why they wanted this very elegant adult non-kids wedding. And this feeling of like, today's my one day to have it not be about this because 99% of the time it is. So that part I do validate how annoying that might be for people that don't have kids and aren't that interested in them.
Sure. Yeah, I give them that. But I will say, I feel like a family that was that intensely child-centric would do a lot of pushback on a child-free wedding.
Yeah, yes. The fact that they came and they at least made her feel, which was, as I was reading it, she was like, they were so excited to like have this kid-free wedding and leave their child home with the other grandma. Like, I'm sure that was a big pain in the ass. I can't imagine going to I would feel a lot of anxiety going to an international wedding, leaving my kids at home with their other grandparents. They did it and they made her feel like they were thrilled.
That they loved it. Yeah. Which maybe they were, but I'm sure there was another part of that they weren't sharing with her.
Some complications. Yeah. To get there.
I know why now. They probably weren't sharing it with her.
Right. Right.
Yeah, right. And here's the thing. I mean, like, it sounds like this happened after the wedding was over. She said the violinist went home. They're like cleaning up. These are desserts they were going to throw out. The grandparent who probably felt bad about he really loves his grandson and felt bad that he couldn't be at the wedding, and then made a little bit at the end of the wedding to give him a little treat because he wasn't there. And I think to be that upset about it for this specific instance, like, if I were her, I would not say anything, because I think that like these people have done a lot to get to your wedding, to not bring their kids. If he wants to bring home some stuff, the waiter is getting paid to be there. He's not staying after his shift. He can find a box. I can understand. It's like, this is like I think people have done a lot for this wedding.
Totally. To make it exactly the way you want it. And it's over. Even the whole, like, the poor waiter had to find a box. Like, I think you're just now looking for things. I agree with you. The taking of the desserts. I actually think, why waste food? Like, it's kind of absurd just to not ruin. I mean, this is maybe an unpopular opinion, but like, to waste the food, not to ruin the elegant vibe when everything's over. Like, if he would have quietly, more discreetly went over to the waiter and said, "Can I have a couple of to-go boxes? I just want to wrap up." And you never were the wiser of it. Would it still bother you if you found out the next day that the desserts were packed up? I don't know. Like, what's the big issue? The big issue is that she wanted an entire day. And I think this is like the kind of bridezilla thing that happens, is like, I get my one day where I get everything exactly from soup to nuts, exactly the way I want it. This was the tail end. I agree with you. I think her getting upset about him asking to box up the desserts is absurd. The bigger thing, I validate, because I could see that being annoying, which is why maybe this is the one thing she can point to, because she can't, or maybe she should say, in general, I think you could say to the grandparents, whether it's your parents or his parents or whoever, whenever we're talking, it feels like you just, no matter what happens, you're easily interrupted by the kids. I would appreciate it if every now and then you could say, "Excuse me, you're going to have to wait a second. I'm talking right now." Like, I think you could maybe somehow find a way to solve the bigger picture issue rather than making it about the desserts, because it's not about the desserts. It's about, and that's not going to change. Tomorrow you're going to wake up and they're going to be continuing to irritate you again about this issue. So maybe you need to address it. And I think that's valid. Like, I try to do that with, like, kids they interrupt a lot. And if you don't make them realize you are not the center of everyone's world all the time, they will act like they are. So I could see wanting some change there, but not.
I agree. And I think, like, if I were like the best man and his wife, and those are I think it would be like a little offensive for you to say something, because it's like, she's like, "It's my one day I don't want to I want to pretend your kids don't exist.
Right.
I didn't want there anyone uttering anything about the children. What if he wanted the to-go box for him? What if he wanted to take home? I mean, that would be like a little tacky, fine from
right.
But like, again, I think it's like, I would look at it as like sweet. And I don't think she should position herself like this because she's going to be like labeled the evil aunt who like hates all the kids.
Which is why I do think I'm glad you wrote in, and this is going to be a long haul for you if you keep focusing on these extraneous symptoms of the bigger problem, which is I want to be able to have a conversation with you where I feel like you're really listening to me and you're not having one ear out for some miscellaneous need of a child that's not urgent. That's important for me to be able to feel connected to you. I want to be able to have a relationship with you where I feel like you care about me. I would address that bigger picture thing. So, because this is going to keep happening otherwise in different contexts, and it's just you're going to end up being like this irrational, like you said, witchy aunt that is just like not nice and cranky. I don't think you want to turn out that way. So I would address a very valid, bigger picture concern.
But I'd give this actual trigger like a 2.
Give the kids the dessert.
Yeah, they're going to throw it out.
And I think the other part that makes this feel like, makes her seem like not the most likable is like everything's over. The wedding was perfect. The flowers and the golden white candles and like this needing for it to be properly, perfectly the most, the best etiquette at the end of the day to make it feel like it was all worth it. Otherwise it's all ruined. If like the elegant vibe is at all tampered with, that is just, come on.
Get it together. All right, I'll read this last one. Hi, Jordana and Dr. Naomi Bernstein. I have a trigger to share about a woman in my book club. I'm in a book club with a group of women in our 30s, and I actually started it with the girl who triggered me. She's the wife of one of my fiance's childhood best friends. Let's call her Erica. She's an avid reader and moved from Washington, D.C. to New York City about 2 years ago. So I thought starting a book club could be a fun way to get her more connected. The idea was that everyone would bring a friend. We started with 6 women, but one left the group and another moved away. So now it's just me, Erica, and 2 of my friends, a current work friend and a former work friend. It's worth mentioning that I'm definitely closer with my work friends. Our first meeting was about a year ago and I hosted. We rotate apartments and who picks the book. I put together a whole spread, a cheese board, popcorn, snacks, and a spritz cocktail for anyone who wanted one. Sounds lovely. The other girls brought flowers, cookies from a bakery, and wine. Erica showed up with a bag of Doritos and her own plastic serving bowl. My current work friend and I laughed about it later, and I even mentioned it to my fiance, who also thought it was funny. We chalked it up to her maybe still learning the ropes of being a good guest. She's newer to the city, grew up in Tennessee, and she and her husband are generally pretty frugal. They talk about money and saving a lot. Over time, she seemed to improve. When she hosted, she had a nice spread of dips. She started bringing a bottle of wine, although she also bought a separate bottle for herself and said, "This one I'm keeping for later," which was a little awkward, but fine. Fast forward to our most recent book club meeting last Thursday. I was hosting again and leaned into a bit of the 1940s theme based on the book. I made meatloaf, potatoes, and gin fizzes. How do people put this shit together? It's quite impressive. My 2 work friends both said in the group chat that they were bringing drinks, and Erica said she was bringing nothing. Screenshot attached for reference. She had a work meeting right before and said she might be late, but she actually ended up arriving 10 minutes early. I had a Carrie Bradshaw moment, and I couldn't help but wonder, could she not have picked something up in those 10 minutes or even been a little late in order to bring something? Also, she works from home and was home all day, and we live in New York City. I think this is bigger than just not bringing something that one time. There's obviously a bit of a pattern here. But because I put a lot of effort into hosting, it kind of hurt my feelings that she didn't seem to recognize that or match the effort in some way. Overall, I think she might do book club more transactionally than the rest of us. For me and the other girls, it's as much about hanging out as it is about reading and discussing the book. It's her turn next to pick the book, and she hasn't yet. And the rest of us are starting to wonder if she's just over it and slowly backing out. I'd love your thoughts. I was definitely triggered by this, but I also recognize that it might come down to different personal preferences. Or maybe the reality is that Erica isn't really my friend. She's just my fiance's friend's wife. Thanks, book club batch. And we have the screenshot, so I think we should read it because sometimes that does give you a little bit more of a sense, a raw material of how annoyed she should be. So there's there's 4 people in the chat. So I think one person should just be everyone besides the other girl.
Okay. I'll be everyone else. First person says, "You beat us all." Someone else says, "She needs to get off this call and start mixing us cocktails." She wrote, "I'm bringing a sparkling something too. It's cold. I brought 2 champs. Nice."
And then their friend, the 4th person in question, says, "My ETA is 5:15. I'm bringing nothing." 4 crying emojis. But good vibes. Today got away from me with back-to-back meetings, but my 4 meeting got rescheduled. So I'll be there shortly. Okay, we have the materials.
My take on this is I think it's cultural. I have noticed, again, even, I'm not sure where they're located, but like
they're in New York City.
Right. Since I've moved to the South, I've noticed that there's like a different vibe with like gatherings and hostings where I've had people where I invite them over and they will bring kind of like their own cooler of stuff that's for them to drink. If you say, "Hey, what is that?" They might say like, "I want one," but it's like their cooler that they keep like near them. And that's like they're not going to ask you for a drink. They're not expecting you to give them drinks, but they are going to bring their own for themselves so they don't have to drink yours, kind of thing. And
it's
also
like a BYOB.
BYOB kind of thing.
Okay.
You know what you like. I want to drink what I want, so I'm just going to bring it.
Interesting.
And also the same thing with like bag of chips. Like it's kind of bag of chips is a contribution. It's a bag of chips. She brought a bowl to put it in. I just think it might be like a cultural difference. I don't know.
Right.
Like if she would have brought a quiche from a grocery store instead of a bag of chips, I don't know. Would that be so different? What's the price difference? It's $8 instead of $4 or,
I kind of agree. I think it's like, one, as people who are not the most intense hosters, I think you and I,
right.
Where, Mike and I have a running joke where like, we had people over the first time we were like living together, and I was like, a bottle of Svedka and a bag of Doritos. And he was like,
Right.
No, that is not how you host an event.
Right.
But I don't do that anymore. This was,
Right.
I was 27. I agree. I think it's like a little bit of like a cultural thing. He's Italian. They're very into hosting. They're very into like making sure there's a ton of food for everyone, like an oversupply of food, or it's not enough. I agree with you. I think it's cultural. And it's funny because the person who's writing in says that she thinks the other person might just think of this as transactional. But to me, it almost feels like she thinks it's more transactional.
Right.
Because she's like, you're not bringing enough stuff to get your seat in the book club. And I'm providing you with more stuff than you're providing me.
Right.
And I think like similar to maybe the person that she's inviting, I would think like the person who's hosting is providing all the food. And when she did host,
when she hosted, she provided,
she had an acceptable assortment of dips. And so I kind of think of hosting that way too. Again, it's cultural. You said in Texas, they bring their own cooler, but I'm kind of like the person who's hosting, in my experience, provides most of the food, and anything I bring is kind of just like an extra nice thing.
Yes.
But not necessary to the party's vibes.
Like happening, totally vibes or whatever. And I actually kind of like the idea of like, okay, I'm hosting. This is like a potluck kind of vibe. Like this is what my personality brings to the table. Like you made a meatloaf and potatoes. And if she brought like a bag of Doritos, that's like her vibe, being her influence on this collective party. It's like her Tennessee, vibe of whatever she's bringing. Like that's what she's bringing. The part that I can validate around being triggered is when she was like, I'm bringing nothing with like crying, laughing emojis, that it might have been nice to say something like, I'm so sorry. I would, I didn't have time to stop off, instead of just like, I'm bringing nothing. Ha ha ha. It would have been nice to say, I'm so sorry. Or I can stop off and bring something, but I'll probably be a little late. And, or after the event, sending a nice text that's like, thank you so much for hosting. Really appreciate it. Sorry, I didn't get to contribute. Some acknowledgement in some way.
Yeah. I think the not bringing anything, not a big deal. I think the lack of humility around it is much more triggering. That seems like a little less polite. Or like I usually would give the option. I could grab something, I might be late or or I could just come if you want to start on time.
Right.
I could see how if you had 10 minutes, if she's 10 minutes, she's like, I could either like be 10 minutes late or be 10 minutes early. Like, what would you prefer?
Yeah. I think part of what's bugging her is like, she feels like she's just showing up like entitled to just show up, when maybe I think the listener is kind of like, it's me and my two friends that I'm actually closer with. Like, you are lucky to be included and you should act that way, is kind of the vibe that I'm getting. And you should contribute in that fashion. But I get it. No humility of like, so sorry. Because it does seem like the vibe is everyone brings a little something, even if it's a bag of chips. I have no problem with the bag of chips. I don't think she brought a bowl to go with it. I'm actually kind of like, that was nice. She doesn't have to dirty up one of your bowls that then you have to wash.
That's a great point. I think if they enjoyed her company more, it would matter less.
Yeah.
It's a little mean girl, but it is kind of accurate. I mean, it's funny. I remember this from like college where we would host these pre-games and there'd be like, sometimes it'd be like, she came, she just like sat on the couch. She didn't even bring chasers.
Yes.
And like, she's just drinking all the alcohol. Like she's not even talking.
Yeah.
I think I remember, and like, is that kind of mean? Like, yeah, but also like, I guess you're sort of like, if you're not going to wow us with your personality, like bring something for everyone.
Right. Yeah. I kind of feel bad. Like she's trying to maybe find her way in like a new culture. And this is like everyone's worst nightmare in some ways, that like they're going to like miss the memo on like how to be socially appropriate in like a party situation in a new big city.
I do agree with the friend who's writing in, who's like, if you care about the event, you would probably like go out of your way to like be a little extra, to like, if you really wanted to be friends, like you might, if I was going to dinner with like a new group of people, I wouldn't be like as late as I might be if I was with my friends, for example. I might be like, because they don't know you as well. And it's just like a little weirder.
Yeah, there is definitely, this is kind of a separate but related topic. There's an interesting dynamic in likability where there's kind of like a try-heartedness, right? Like when you're meeting new people, there are some people where you get the vibe that they're really trying. They're like bringing the thing, they're making sure, they're apologizing if they're not doing the right thing. They're being really thankful. They're like being a little people pleasery, try hard. I'm going to make an effort to be really nice and likable. And then there's some people that almost have this feeling, a vibe of like, my presence is your present. And so I think that might be a bit of what's going on here. And I do think it matters. Like there's definitely different ranges on that spectrum of how hard people try in social situations. And I think you're more likely to be well liked when you try hard and apologize and are humble and are grateful. And
yeah, I think especially
that's cultural too, a little bit,
especially in the beginning. I think of something.
Yeah,
I think I think it's cultural, but it's also like, like if I say this all the time, like if you get a new job, you can't show up late on your first day. You can show up late on your like 40th day or even like your 20th day, but like you need to show in the beginning that you care about being there.
Right.
Because like you're trying to make an impression of who you are, and you haven't really like earned the right to not be your best self yet.
Yes. But I do think some people, and this is an interesting conversation, some people feel kind of like, I shouldn't have to earn this friendship. Like I'm going to show up with my bag of Doritos and you either like me or you don't. Like I shouldn't have to try hard to get you to like me. And if I do, then you're not my people.
I don't even know about like try to get you to like me. It's more just like show you that I give a shit.
Right. Yeah.
To me.
Yeah.
Like if someone showed up on like a first date and they were in pajamas.
Right.
You might be like, sure, that's what you wanted to do and I can like you or not. But I'd like to have a sense that you put some effort in, that you care about being here.
Totally. I get that, but I do think is a personality type out there where it's kind of like, I shouldn't have to try. And maybe that's what this is a personality type that's kind of like, if you love me for me, then I shouldn't have to stop off on the way just to bring the thing, just to show you that I get it. I'm not that person either. And I probably would lean towards feeling the way that this listener's feeling, but I do think there's a personality type out there that's of that ilk of like, I'm just going to show up. And if you really like me, then you'll accept me for me, which is showing up with nothing because I'm busy, or a bag of Doritos or whatever.
Sure.
How triggering is this?
I think it's a 3 because she didn't say, so sorry, I'm not bringing anything. Next time I'll bring something.
I'll give it a 3. If this continues to happen, then it really shows that she's just really not making an effort. Then I would bump it up. I would give her one more try. Let's see what happens on the next one. But she did host nicely. So maybe it is just more of like a misunderstanding. When I'm hosting, I'm going to do it right. And when I'm coming, I'll bring something if I can, might be her vibe. So yeah, I'll give it like a 2.5.
All right. We did it.
We did it. All right. That's our time.
Great work today.